A 4-year-old street urchin finds a millionaire being crucified by a biker gang, but she sees everything and does something that shocks everyone. Rate my story from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The scream echoed through the empty parking lot like a wounded animal, shattering the silence of the cold night. The 4-year-old girl, so small and fragile she seemed barely 2, shrank even further behind the stinking dumpster. Her dirty little fingers clutched the moldy piece of bread she'd found amongst the leftovers from the fancy restaurant, but now she couldn't even think about food. 5 hooded bikers surrounded a tall, well-dressed man against the iron gate of the derelict warehouse. The businessman, whom she'd seen several times leaving the expensive restaurant in luxury cars, was tied up with thick ropes. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, staining his immaculate suit. He was a handsome man, with the look of a movie star, but now his blue eyes were filled with terror. "Please, I swear I don't owe you anything," he pleaded, his voice hoarse. "There must be some mistake." One of the bikers, the tallest, punched the businessman in the stomach. "Liar! You destroyed our business, stole our clients, left us in ruin." The girl trembled, not just from the cold that seeped through her rags, but from the fear that gripped her small heart. She knew violence. She'd been hit many times by the woman who claimed to be her mother, but she'd never witnessed anything as terrible as this. The widowed millionaire, owner of a chain of thriving businesses in the area, continued to deny any debt. His wealth had grown exponentially in recent years through smart investments in stocks and real estate. He had so much money that he even kept part of his fortune in Bitcoin, always cautious with the diversification of his assets. "You don't understand," he gasped. "I built my business honestly. I never hurt anyone on purpose." Another biker laughed cruelly. "Honestly? You bought out the suppliers who worked with us, offered prices we couldn't compete with. 5 families lost their jobs because of you." The girl watched everything with wide, frightened eyes. The woman who looked after her always said she was useless, a burden, but at that moment something strange happened in her chest. A feeling she couldn't name, something that made her want to help that suffering man. The bikers started arguing amongst themselves about what to do next. The words were too low for her to understand completely, but she caught snippets of phrases that made her even more terrified. "Has to learn. Example for others. No one will know." The businessman was 30 years old, had lost his wife 2 years ago in a terrible accident, and since then had dedicated himself entirely to business. His fortune in dollars seemed endless, but at that moment he realized that all the money in the world wouldn't save him from this situation. The girl looked around, searching for some way to help. The parking lot was completely deserted. The streetlights barely illuminated the area, and there was no one nearby. The restaurant had closed hours ago, and she was only there because she used to rummage through the trash for leftovers. It was then that an idea popped into her childish mind. Without thinking about the consequences, without measuring the danger, she stumbled out from behind the dumpster as if she were lost and confused. "Mommy! Mommy!" She began to cry loudly, her high-pitched voice echoing through the parking lot. "Where are you, Mommy?" The 5 bikers turned sharply, surprised by the sudden appearance of the child. One of them cursed under his breath. "Where did this kid come from?" the leader growled. "Mommy!" She continued to cry, approaching the group with unsteady steps, as if she didn't realize what was happening. "I'm scared. I can't find you." The businessman looked at her in astonishment. It was the street urchin he had seen a few times on the streets, always accompanied by a ragged woman. Their eyes met for an instant, and he saw something there that surprised him, a brilliant intelligence hidden behind that fragile appearance. "We have to get out of here," said one of the bikers nervously. "We can't do this in front of a child." "She's just a beggar," replied another. "Who's going to believe her?" But the leader was already untying the ropes that bound the businessman. "No, this complicates everything. Let's go." "Mommy!" The girl continued crying, now approaching even closer. Why did you leave me alone?" In a matter of seconds, the bikers jumped on their bikes and disappeared into the night, leaving only the sound of the engines fading away. The businessman fell to his knees, free but injured, still trying to process what had happened. The girl stopped crying instantly and approached him carefully. "Are you okay?" she asked in her small, hoarse voice. He looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. That child had just saved his life. But why? What would such a small girl gain by helping a stranger? You saved me," he murmured, still in shock. She shrugged, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "They were going to hurt you. I don't like it when people get hurt." The businessman stood up slowly, wiping the blood from his face with the sleeve of his expensive shirt. He looked at the girl more closely. Dirty, torn clothes, disheveled hair, a face too thin for a child. But the eyes had something special. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "I don't have a pretty name," she replied, lowering her head. "The woman just calls me Kid." "The woman? Who takes care of me? She said she is my mom, but—" The child hesitated, as if she knew she shouldn't say certain things. The businessman knelt down to be at her level. "Where is she now?" "Sleeping. She drank a lot today. She always drinks a lot." Something stirred in the rich man's chest. A feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time, since he lost his wife. Protection, caring, responsibility. "Are you hungry?" he asked. The girl's eyes lit up. "Always." "Then let's get you something to eat." As they walked towards his car, the businessman couldn't stop thinking. That child had risked everything to save him, without expecting anything in return. In his 30 years of life, building a fortune that most people only dreamed of, he had never met someone so genuinely selfless. But there was something more. Something in her eyes that intrigued him. A sadness too deep for such a small child. And the marks he had noticed on her thin arms. Were they bruises? "Sir?" The small voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Yes? Are those bad men coming back?" The question made him stop. He hadn't thought about that yet. The bikers had fled, but their threats echoed in his mind. They knew his business, talked about suppliers, about companies that went bankrupt. They weren't common criminals. They were people who had personal reasons to hate him. "I don't know," he replied honestly, "but if they come back, I'll be prepared." The girl nodded gravely, as if she understood much more about danger than any child should understand. As she devoured a sandwich he bought at a gas station, the businessman made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. He couldn't simply let that girl go back to the situation of abandonment she lived in. She had saved his life, and now he would save hers. But first, he needed to find out who those bikers were and why they were so sure he owed them something. And more importantly, he needed to better understand the situation of the girl and the woman who claimed to be her mother. What he didn't know was that, in making this decision, he was about to discover secrets that would shake the foundations of everything he believed about his own life. 3 days had passed since the incident in the parking lot, and the businessman couldn't get the image of the girl out of his head. He had offered her money that night, but she refused, saying the woman would be angry if she found out. That intrigued him even more. What kind of child refused help when she lived in such precarious conditions? Now, sitting in his elegant office on the top floor of the commercial building he owned, he watched the city bustle through the glass window. His stock investments had performed well that week, further increasing his net worth, but the money didn't bring the satisfaction it used to. There was something different, a restlessness he couldn't name. The secretary knocked on the door and came in with a stack of documents. "Sir, the contracts for the new acquisition have arrived, and there's a woman downstairs wanting to talk to you. She says it's about work." "What kind of work?" "Cleaning, sir. She looks, well, needy." The businessman's heart raced. Could it be the woman who cared for the girl? "Send her up." 15 minutes later, a ragged-looking woman walked into his office. She was about 40 years old, with disheveled hair, shabby clothes, and the unmistakable smell of alcohol. But what shocked him most was realizing she was much younger than he had imagined. The hard life had prematurely aged her face. "Are you the owner of this place?" she asked, looking around with a mixture of envy and discomfort. "I am. How can I help you? I need work. Anything. I know how to clean, organize." Her voice was hoarse, tired. "I have a girl to support." He leaned forward. "The girl? Is she all right?" The woman frowned. "What do you mean?" "Of course she is. Why wouldn't she be? Just asking." "How old is she?" 4 years old. She's a difficult child, always sticking her nose where it doesn't belong." There was something in her voice, an irritation that made the businessman feel a pang in his chest. "Difficult how?" The woman laughed bitterly. "Always asking questions, always wanting things she can't have. Sometimes I need to be firm with her. A kid has to learn her place in the world." The businessman kept his expression neutral, but inside he felt a growing anger. "I understand. About the work. I can offer you a position as a cleaning lady. The salary is good, but I demand punctuality and responsibility." The woman's eyes gleamed with poorly disguised greed. "How much?" He mentioned a generous amount, well above what he usually paid for that type of job. Her reaction confirmed his suspicions. It wasn't love for the child that motivated her. It was pure financial need. "When can I start?" "Tomorrow." "But there's a condition." The businessman stood up and walked to the window. "I want to know more about your family situation. The girl, where does she stay while you work?" "That's my problem," she replied defensively. "If you're going to work for me, I need to know that your personal life doesn't interfere with the job. Does the child have a safe place to stay?" The woman hesitated. "She stays with me. She's quiet, doesn't bother anyone. Bring her tomorrow. We have a children's area in the building. You can leave her there while you work." For the first time, the woman seemed genuinely surprised. "Really? You'd let me?" "Of course. A well-cared-for child is a child who doesn't cause problems." The next morning, the businessman arrived at the office earlier, eager for the meeting. Around 8 o'clock, he saw the woman approaching the building through the window, dragging a small, fragile figure by the hand. The girl was even thinner than he remembered, wearing the same dirty clothes from 3 days ago. She walked with her head down, as if trying to become invisible. When they arrived at his office, she hid behind the woman. "This is the kid," said the woman without much interest. "As I said, she's quiet." The businessman knelt down to be at the child's level. "Hi, do you remember me?" The girl looked up quickly and nodded almost imperceptibly. There was recognition there, but also fear. "I'll show you where you can stay while your mother works. There are toys, books, even television." "She doesn't need luxuries," interrupted the woman sharply. "She can stay in any corner." "No," said the businessman firmly. "A child needs adequate stimulation to develop." He took both of them to a room on the second floor that had been converted into a small recreational space for employees' children. It had colorful rugs, a shelf with children's books, some educational toys, and a small television. The girl's eyes widened when she saw that environment. It was as if she had never seen anything like it. "You can play as much as you want," he said gently. "If you need anything, just ask any employee." The woman seemed impatient to start working, but the businessman still had questions. "Where do you live?" "In a rented room." "Nothing luxurious like this here." "And the girl's father?" The woman's expression closed completely. "There is no father. It's just me and her." "I understand. Well, let's start the work then." During the first few hours, the businessman tried to concentrate on his tasks, but he constantly caught himself thinking about the girl downstairs. Around noon, he decided to pay her a visit. He found her sitting on the floor, staring at a children's storybook, although it was evident that she didn't know how to read. There was something touching in the way she held the book so carefully, as if it were a treasure. "Do you like stories?" he asked, sitting next to her on the rug. "I don't know how to read," she admitted softly, "but I like the pictures. Do you want me to read to you?" For the first time since he met her, he saw a genuine smile light up her face. It was an incredible transformation. Suddenly, she really looked like a 4-year-old child. He spent the next half hour reading stories to her, watching her eyes sparkle with each page. She asked intelligent questions, demonstrated a natural curiosity that had clearly been suppressed. "Why didn't the princess run away sooner?" she asked about one of the stories. "What do you think?" "I think she was scared. Sometimes it's hard to run away, even when we really want to." The answer hit him like a punch. There was a depth in those words that went far beyond her age. "Have you ever wanted to run away from something?" he asked carefully. The girl was quiet for a long moment. "Everyone wants to run away sometimes, right?" Before he could answer, the woman appeared at the door with an angry expression. "What are you doing? I thought she was going to stay quiet here. I was just reading some stories. She's very intelligent." "Too smart for her own good," the woman grumbled. "Come on, kid, you've already caused enough trouble." "Actually," interrupted the businessman, "how about if she has lunch with us today? I can order something at the building's restaurant." The woman hesitated, clearly tempted by the idea of a free meal. "Well, if it's not a bother." During lunch, the businessman discreetly observed the interaction between the two. The woman barely spoke to the girl, and when she did, it was always in a harsh or impatient tone. The child ate as if she had been starving for days, but with extreme care, as if she was afraid of dropping something. "Does she always eat like this?" he asked. "She eats as she can," replied the woman, already visibly annoyed by the questions. "Food doesn't fall from the sky." "Of course not, but a child needs proper nutrition to grow." "Do you have children?" The question caught him off guard. "No, my wife. She passed away before we could have children." "Then you don't know how hard it is to take care of a child alone, without money, without any help." There was truth in that, but there was also something more. A coldness in the way she looked at the girl, as if the child were an unwanted burden. That afternoon, while the woman cleaned the offices, the businessman went back to talk to the girl. He found her drawing with some crayons he had left in the room. "What are you drawing?" "A house," she replied, showing the paper. It was a simple drawing, but there was something disturbing about it. The house was surrounded by bars, and the figure of a child was outside, looking in. "Why is the girl outside the house?" "Because she can't go in." "The house isn't hers." "And where does she live then?" The child pointed to a small, dark square in the corner of the paper. "Here, in the small, dark place." The businessman felt a pang in his chest. "It doesn't seem like a very happy place." "It's not," she said naturally, "but it's where she has to stay." "What if someone offered her to live in the big house? What do you think would happen?" The girl's eyes filled with a deep sadness. "The woman would be very angry. She always gets angry when someone is nice to me." The revelation was like a slap in the face for the businessman. The child was being isolated, prevented from receiving affection or proper care. "Does the woman get angry with you often?" The girl glanced quickly at the door, as if she was afraid of being heard. "She says it's because I'm bad, that I do wrong things." "What kind of wrong things?" "When I cry, when I'm hungry, when I ask questions." Her voice became even lower. "When I break something without meaning to." "And what happens when she gets angry?" The child pulled at the sleeves of her blouse, covering her arms. The gesture was subtle, but the businessman noticed. There was something there that she didn't want him to see. At that moment, he made a decision that would change everything. He could no longer pretend he didn't see what was happening. That child was suffering, and he had the power and resources to do something about it. But before acting, he needed more information, and most importantly, he needed proof. "You know what we're going to do," he said to the girl. "Tomorrow I'm going to bring you more books, and maybe some games too. Will the woman let me? The woman works for me now, and I say that a happy child is a child who behaves well." For the first time, the girl smiled for real. And in that smile, the businessman saw not only hope, but also an intelligence and strength that had been brutally suppressed. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to discover that the secrets of that duo were much darker than he imagined, and that his decision to help would not only change the life of the girl, but reveal truths about his own past that would leave him completely shaken. A week had passed since the woman started working in the building, and the businessman had established a routine of daily visits to the girl. With each conversation, he discovered new layers of suffering hidden behind those big, sad eyes. The child demonstrated surprising intelligence, but also worrying signs of trauma that left him increasingly restless. On that Thursday morning, he arrived at the office earlier, determined to better observe the dynamics between the woman and the girl. He positioned himself strategically near the window overlooking the parking lot and waited. At 7:30, he saw the two approaching. The woman walked with large, impatient steps, while the girl ran behind, clearly struggling to keep up. When the child tripped and fell on the asphalt, the woman's reaction shocked him deeply. "Get up now, you useless thing," shouted, yanking the girl by the arm with unnecessary force. "Always messing things up." The girl quickly got to her feet, wiping away tears with the back of her dirty hand. There was a red mark on her arm where the woman had grabbed her, and the businessman felt anger boil in his chest. When they reached the office, he pretended to be distracted, as if he hadn't seen anything. But he carefully observed how the girl limped slightly as she walked. She had hurt herself in the fall, but didn't dare complain. "Good morning," he greeted politely. "Good morning, sir," replied the woman, already in her cleaning uniform. "Can I leave her in the usual place?" "Of course. By the way, I bought some new books yesterday. I think she'll like them." The woman rolled her eyes. "You're spoiling that girl too much. She'll become entitled. A child never becomes entitled from receiving education and affection," he replied firmly. "Education?" The woman laughed scornfully. "She won't even be able to use it. People like us don't have the right to big dreams." The casual way she crushed any hope the child had revolted him, but he kept his composure. "Well, let's start the work then." After settling the girl in the recreational room, the businessman returned to his office, but couldn't concentrate. About an hour later, he went down to check on her. He found her sitting in the darkest corner of the room, hugging her knees and staring into space. The new books were untouched on the table. "Why aren't you playing?" he asked, sitting next to her. "I don't deserve it," she murmured softly. "What do you mean you don't deserve it?" "The woman said I was bad this morning, that I fell on purpose to get attention." Her voice was so small he could barely hear it. "Bad children don't deserve good things." The businessman's heart broke. "Look at me," he said gently, lifting her chin carefully. "You're not bad. Falling is normal. It happens to everyone. And you do deserve all the good things in the world. Really, especially you." He picked up one of the new books and opened it to the first page. "Do you want me to read this story? It's about a brave girl who saves an entire kingdom." For the first time that day, he saw a flicker of interest in her eyes. They spent the next hour reading together, and he watched as she gradually relaxed, allowing herself to smile at the protagonist's adventures. "She's very brave," commented the girl about the heroine of the story. "Just like you. I'm not brave, I'm tiny and weak. Remember the night we met? You were the bravest person I've ever seen. You saved me when you didn't even know me." The girl thought about it. It was different. You were in danger, like I am sometimes. The comparison hit him like lightning. She had identified with him because she recognized the helplessness, the vulnerability. She was a 4-year-old child who already understood what it meant to be at the mercy of stronger, crueler people. During lunch, he watched more closely. The woman ate normally, but strictly controlled the amount of food the girl received. "She's eaten enough," she said when the businessman offered her another piece of bread. "But she's still hungry," he protested. "Children always want more than they need. If you let them, they'll eat until they're sick." The girl looked at the bread with evident desire, but didn't dare ask for it. The businessman waited for the woman to get distracted and discreetly slid the bread closer to the child, who quickly grabbed it and ate it, as if she feared it would be taken away from her. That afternoon, while the woman worked upstairs, the businessman had a more serious conversation with the girl. "Can I ask you some personal questions?" he began. She nodded, but he noticed how her body stiffened, preparing for what might come. "How long have you lived with this woman?" "I can't really count time. A long time, always, I think." "Do you remember anyone else, other adults who took care of you?" The girl frowned, concentrating. "Sometimes I have dreams, with a white-haired lady who spoke softly to me, but the woman said it's just my imagination." "What kind of dreams?" "The lady gave me warm food and told me stories. She smelled like flowers." The girl's eyes filled with tears. "But they were just dreams, right?" "The woman said no one else wants me." The businessman felt a growing suspicion form in his mind. That woman didn't seem to have any maternal instincts toward the child, treating her more like property than a daughter. And the girl's memories sounded too specific to be just imagination. "Tell me about where you live." "It's a small room. There's only one bed where the woman sleeps. I sleep on the floor, on a blanket." She spoke naturally, as if that were normal. "There's the sound of rats at night, but the woman says it's my fault when they appear." "Your fault, because I always let crumbs of food fall, but it's just that sometimes my hands shake when I'm very hungry." With each word, the businessman's indignation grew. A 4-year-old child living on the floor, starving, being blamed for problems she clearly didn't cause. "And when the woman gets angry with you, what happens?" The girl went very quiet. "I'd rather not talk about that." "Why?" "Because then you might get angry with me too. All the adults get angry when I say things they don't want to hear." "I promise I won't get angry with you. Nothing you say will make me angry with you, understand? Only with whoever hurts you." She studied him for a long moment, as if trying to decide if she could trust him. Finally, she pulled up her sleeve, revealing her thin arm. What the businessman saw made him nauseous. Bruises in various stages of healing covered the child's arm, some clearly recent, others already yellowing. There were also marks that looked like cigarette burns. "My God," he murmured, struggling to control the fury he felt. "I broke a glass yesterday," she explained quickly, as if it were her fault. "It wasn't on purpose, but the woman said I have to learn to be more careful." "That's not being careful," he said, his voice trembling with controlled anger. That's very wrong." "Is it?" The innocent question almost made him cry. That child had been so mistreated that she didn't even know she deserved to be treated better. "Very wrong. No adult should ever hurt a child, never." "But I'm bad sometimes." "No," he said firmly, but without raising his voice so as not to scare her. "You're not bad. You're a little girl, and all little children make mistakes sometimes. That's normal. And even when you make mistakes, no one has the right to hurt you." Silent tears streamed down her face. "Then why does she do this to me?" It was a question he didn't know how to answer for a 4-year-old, how to explain human cruelty, abuse, the lack of genuine love to someone so small. "Some adult people are very hurt inside," he said carefully. "And when they're hurt, sometimes they hurt others, especially those who are smaller and weaker. But that's not your fault. It never is." At that moment, they heard footsteps in the hallway. The girl quickly pulled her sleeve down, covering the marks, and moved away from him. The woman entered the room with an irritated expression. "What are you doing?" "I thought she was going to stay quiet while I worked." "We were just talking," replied the businessman, struggling to keep his voice neutral. Talking about what? She has a habit of making up stories, you know. Sometimes she says nonsense that even she doesn't believe. The way she preemptively dismissed anything the girl might have said confirmed the businessman's suspicions. That woman knew exactly what she was doing. What kind of stories? Oh, you know how children are. They want attention. They make up that they're sick, that they're hurt. Drama all the time. The businessman looked at the girl, who had lowered her head and seemed to have shrunk in on herself. The transformation was visible, from a child who was finally opening up to someone who was returning to hide in her protective shell. "Well, I think it's better for you to finish the work," he said to the woman. "The day is almost over." After they left, the businessman was alone in his office, processing everything he had seen and heard. His fortune, all his investments in stocks and real estate, his constantly growing wealth, none of that mattered in the face of that child's suffering. He picked up the phone and called a lawyer he knew, a specialist in children's rights. "I need some information on how to report a case of child abuse," he said, when the call was answered. "Do you have concrete evidence?" "I saw the marks with my own eyes. And the child confirmed that she's being abused. That's enough to start an investigation, but you need to be prepared for the consequences. Cases like this can be complex, especially if the child has no other known relatives." "What do you mean?" "If we remove the child from the current environment, she'll need to go somewhere. Orphanages, foster families. They aren't always ideal situations." The businessman was silent for a moment. There was a possibility that had been growing in his mind since he met the girl, but that he hadn't yet dared to consider completely. What if someone offered to take care of the child, someone with adequate resources and conditions? "You're talking about adoption?" "Possibly. It would require a complete legal process, investigations into your suitability as a parent, background checks." The lawyer paused. "But considering your history and financial situation, it would certainly be a viable option." After hanging up, the businessman stared out the window while processing the magnitude of the decision he was considering. He had lost his chance to be a father when his wife passed away, but now fate had placed a child in his path, a child who desperately needed someone to love and protect her. And he knew, with a certainty that surprised him, that he already loved that girl as if she were his own daughter. But first, he needed to get her out of that abusive situation. And something told him that the woman wouldn't hand over the child without a fight. What he didn't know was that at that very moment, the woman was plotting something that would change everything, and that the bikers who had tried to attack him were back in town, more determined than ever to take justice into their own hands. The next morning, the businessman arrived at the office, determined to act, but found only the woman waiting at the reception. She was visibly nervous, fidgeting with her hands and constantly looking at the door. "Where's the girl?" he asked immediately. "She got sick overnight," she replied quickly. "High fever, vomiting. I thought it was best to leave her at home resting." The businessman's instinct screamed that it was a lie. After the conversation the previous day, the woman probably realized that he was suspecting something and decided to keep the child away. What kind of illness? "Ah, you know how children are. They catch anything." "Must have been something she ate." The woman avoided looking directly at him. "She'll be fine in a few days. Did you take her to the doctor?" "Doctors cost money. She's strong. She'll recover on her own." The coldness with which she spoke about the child's well-being confirmed all the businessman's suspicions. A real mother would be worried, would want the best possible treatment for her daughter, wouldn't leave a sick 4-year-old child alone at home. "Where do you live exactly?" "I can send a doctor to pay a visit." The woman stiffened. "No need. I already said she'll be fine. I insist, a sick child needs proper care." "You're getting too involved in our life," she said with poorly disguised aggression. "We're poor, but I know how to take care of the girl." "Take care." The word came out loaded with irony. "I saw the marks on her arms yesterday." The woman paled. What marks? Bruises, burns, clear signs of aggression. The girl is clumsy, always hurting herself, and as I said, she makes up stories to get attention. A 4-year-old child doesn't invent bruises in the shape of adult fingers. The silence that followed was tense. The woman realized she had been discovered, but instead of showing regret, her expression became calculating. What exactly are you accusing me of? I'm saying that I saw evidence of abuse, and as a responsible citizen, I intend to take the appropriate measures. The woman laughed bitterly. Appropriate measures? You're rich, powerful, and I'm just a poor woman trying to survive. Who's going to believe me against your accusations? The truth doesn't depend on money, doesn't it? Then let me tell you a truth. That girl isn't my biological daughter. I found her abandoned 3 years ago. She was starving and freezing. I could have left her to die, but I took her home, gave her shelter, food. The businessman was shocked by the revelation, but she continued. Now the rich man shows up wanting to play the hero. But what if I told the authorities that you have a strange obsession with a child you barely know, that you offer her gifts, want to be alone with her, ask intimate questions? The threat was clear. She was willing to destroy his reputation to maintain control over the situation. Are you blackmailing me? I'm protecting myself, and protecting the girl from someone who may have dubious intentions. My intentions are only to help a child who's being abused. Prove that. Prove that your intentions are pure when you, a 30-year-old single man, suddenly become so interested in a small and vulnerable girl. The businessman realized the trap he had fallen into. In the society that often suspected the motives of men who were interested in children, especially single and wealthy men, her accusations could be devastating to his reputation and his business. What do you want? He asked, recognizing that he needed to change his strategy. I want you to stop interfering in my life and the girl's life. Continue paying me for the work, but stop with these questions and this excessive concern. And if I don't accept, then you'll find out how difficult it is to run a business when your reputation is tarnished by suspicions of pedophilia. The word, pronounced with such cruelty, made him feel nauseous. She had transformed his genuine desire to protect the child into something sordid and perverted. All right, he said finally, but I want to see the girl tomorrow. I want to make sure she's really sick and hasn't been hurt. She'll be here tomorrow, agreed the woman, satisfied with her apparent victory. After she left to work, the businessman was alone with his turbulent thoughts. The blackmail had worked because there was a grain of truth in the social concerns she exploited. As a single, wealthy, and powerful man, any accusation about his interest in a child would be devastating. But there was something more disturbing in the conversation. The revelation that the girl wasn't the woman's biological daughter opened even darker possibilities. If she had found the child abandoned, how exactly had that happened? And why would a woman who clearly didn't like children bother to rescue her? Around noon, he received an unexpected call. It was the building's receptionist. "Sir, there are 2 men downstairs wanting to talk to you. They say it's about a girl." His heart jumped. What kind of men? They seem to be officers from some institution. They have uniforms and documents. Send them up. Minutes later, 2 middle-aged men entered his office. One of them showed an official ID. "We're from Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous report about a girl who frequents this location." The businessman felt the floor disappear from under his feet. What kind of report? Allegations that an adult in this building has demonstrated inappropriate interest in a minor. The person who made the report said they witnessed suspicious behavior. The woman had fulfilled her threat faster than he imagined, and now he was being investigated for crimes he never committed, while the real abuser remained free. "Can I know who made the report?" "Confidential information. But we need to ask some questions and see the environment where this child stays when she's here." During the next hour, the businessman answered invasive questions about his personal life, his motives for helping the girl, and his family situation. The investigators examined the recreational room where the child played, made notes about the gifts he had given her. "We understand that you're single and childless," said one of the investigators. "Can you explain to us why you developed this particular interest in this specific child?" "She helped me in a difficult situation. I felt I should return the kindness." "What kind of situation?" The businessman hesitated. Telling about the biker's attack could further complicate his situation, but lying would be worse. "I was attacked by some men a few weeks ago. The girl, without knowing it, ended up helping me escape. I felt grateful, and that gratitude led you to offer employment to the woman who takes care of her?" "Yes, I realized they lived in precarious conditions." "Have you observed any signs of abuse or neglect on the part of this woman?" The question was a trap. If he said yes, he would confirm that there were specific reasons for his interest in the child, which could be interpreted as suspicious. If he said no, he would be lying and betraying the girl. "I've seen some worrying things," he admitted. "Unexplained bruises, signs of malnutrition. And why haven't you reported that to the competent authorities?" "I was considering doing so." The investigators exchanged meaningful glances. Interesting that someone with suspicions about child abuse takes so long to act, but is so quick to get personally involved with the child. The implication was clear. They were suggesting that he had invented the suspicions of abuse to justify his interest in the girl. When the investigators finally left, the businessman felt completely defeated. The woman had executed her blackmail with surgical precision, using the child protection system as a weapon against him. But what worried him most wasn't his own situation. It was what would happen to the girl. If the investigators concluded that he represented a threat, they would prohibit any contact between them, and she would be completely at the mercy of her abuser, with no one to protect her. That afternoon, while trying to process the situation, he received another disturbing call. It was an unknown number. "Are you the owner of the chain of stores?" asked a rough male voice. "Who's speaking?" "Someone who has unfinished business with you." "We didn't get to finish our conversation the other night." The businessman immediately recognized the voice. It was one of the bikers who had attacked him. "What do you want?" "Justice. You destroyed our lives, and now we're going to destroy yours. But this time, we're going to do it right." "I never—" "Shut up and listen. We know where you live. We know your routine. We know the important people in your life. And we know about the girl." The businessman's blood ran cold. "Leave her out of this." "Why? She's important to you, isn't she? Then maybe she's the key to making you pay for what you did to us." The call ended, leaving him in total panic. Now it wasn't just his safety that was at risk. The girl had also become a target. He needed to warn the woman, despite everything that had happened between them. An innocent child couldn't become a victim of a war she had nothing to do with. But when he tried to call her, he discovered that the number she had given was out of service. And when he asked the building's doorman, he discovered something even more alarming. The woman hadn't shown up for work that afternoon, and no one knew where to find her or where the girl was. The businessman spent the entire night sleepless, driving through the streets of the city in his luxury car, looking for any sign of the woman and the girl. His accumulated fortune in investments and stocks seemed useless in the face of the anguish he felt. He visited every area where he knew homeless people took refuge, questioned people at the stations, offered generous rewards for any information. At 6 in the morning, exhausted and desperate, he returned to the office hoping to find some news. Instead, he found a surprise that left him completely shocked. An elegant woman was sitting in the reception, holding the hand of a 4-year-old boy. It was his ex-wife. "Hello, darling," she said with a cold smile that he knew well. "I've missed you." The businessman was paralyzed for a few seconds, processing the ghostly appearance of the woman who had destroyed his emotional life 2 years earlier. She was even more beautiful, dressed in expensive clothes, discreet but valuable jewelry, and the boy next to her. "This is your son," she said, noticing his fixed gaze on the child. "Our son. He's named as you wanted. Has your eyes, your stubborn temperament." The businessman's world crumbled once again. A son. He had a 4-year-old son he had never met, never held in his arms, never seen take his first steps. "Why now?" he managed to ask, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Because now you're in a position to support us adequately," she replied, with the brutal honesty that had always characterized her. "When I left, you were struggling to keep a small business afloat. Now you're a rich man, with enough wealth to secure your son's future. You hid my own son from me for 2 years because of money." "Because of stability," she corrected. "A child needs financial security. I couldn't raise our son in uncertainty." The boy fidgeted restlessly, clearly uncomfortable with the tension between the adults. The businessman knelt down to be at his level. "Hi," he said gently. "How are you?" The boy hid behind his mother, shy. He was a beautiful child, with features that definitely resembled the businessman. But there was something familiar in that face that went beyond genetic similarity. "He doesn't know you," said the ex-wife, "but he'll get used to it. Children are adaptable. What do you want from me?" "I want us to be a family again. You have financial stability now. I have our son. It makes sense." "It makes sense to you," he said bitterly. 2 years ago you said I would never be successful enough, that you didn't want to waste your life with me. And I was right. You needed the pain of separation to motivate you to build this empire." She gestured around the luxurious office. "Look what you accomplished without distractions." Her calculating coldness revolted him, but the undeniable fact was that he had a son. A child who had grown up without a father because of his mother's greed and opportunism. "I need time to process this," he said. "Of course, but not too much time. The boy needs stability and I need an answer." After they left, the businessman was alone with the weight of yet another twist. In less than 24 hours, he had discovered he was a father, was being investigated for suspicions of pedophilia, and a child he cared about had disappeared along with her abuser. Around noon, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. "There's a little girl here who says she knows you," said a tired female voice. "Where?" "City Hospital. Pediatric emergency room. She's badly hurt." The businessman ran out of the office, leaving important meetings cancelled and multi-million-dollar deals in the background. He arrived at the hospital in record time, finding a scene that completely shattered him. The girl was on a small gurney, with her arm in a cast and bandages spread across her face and body. She was conscious, but her eyes had an emptiness that terrified him. "What happened?" he asked the nurse. The woman who brought her said she fell down some stairs. Broken arm, some bruised ribs, widespread bruises. The nurse lowered her voice. "But the injuries aren't consistent with a fall. They look more like systematic abuse." "Where's the woman who brought her?" "She left to get some documents 2 hours ago. She hasn't returned." The girl had been abandoned at the hospital, hurt and alone. The businessman approached the gurney, and when she saw him, for the first time in days, she smiled weakly. "You came," she whispered with difficulty. "Of course I came. I'll always come when you need me. The woman said you wouldn't want to see me anymore, that you found out I was bad." "You're not bad. You never were, and I'll never stop wanting to see you." The nurse approached. "Are you a relative of the child?" "I'm a family friend." "Well, someone needs to take responsibility for her. The woman who brought her filled out a false form. None of the information checks out." "False form? False name, non-existent address, phone that doesn't exist. It's as if this woman doesn't officially exist." A terrible suspicion began to form in the businessman's mind. What if the woman really didn't exist in the system? What if she was someone living completely on the fringes of society, without documents, without traces? Can I take temporary responsibility for the child? It would be necessary to contact social services, but considering she was apparently abandoned, do whatever is necessary. In the next few hours, while navigating the hospital bureaucracy, the businessman tried to understand what had happened. The girl, when she could speak, told a fragmented and confused story. "The woman got very angry when we got home," she murmured, "said you were going to get her out of jail if you found things out." "What jail?" "She always said she was going back to jail if anyone found out about me." I didn't understand. "And what happened for you to get so hurt?" "She said I had to disappear before you told the police about the marks on my arm, but I didn't want to disappear. Then she got very angry and there was a lot of noise." The story was clear. The woman had panicked at the threat of exposure, had brutally assaulted the child in her fury, and then abandoned her at the hospital to flee. During the afternoon, while the girl slept under the effect of pain medication, the businessman received another disturbing call. "See what happens when you stick your nose where it doesn't belong." It was the voice of the bikers again. "Did you do this to her?" "Us? We didn't need to. The woman did the dirty work for us. But it was educational to see how you reacted when someone important to you got hurt. What do you want? Now that we know your weakness, things have gotten simpler. You're going to pay for what you did to us, and the girl will guarantee your cooperation. She's in a hospital under protection, for now, but hospitals have many exits, many dark places, and a small hurt child is very vulnerable." The threat was clear. They were going to use the girl as a way to blackmail him. "How much do you want?" "It's not about money, rich man. It's about justice. You destroyed 5 families when you bought our suppliers and bankrupted us. Now you're going to understand what it's like to lose everything." "I didn't know I was going to hurt you. It was just business." "Just business." The voice became furious. "My brother killed himself when he lost the company, left a wife and 2 kids. Is that just business to you?" The businessman was silent, processing the magnitude of the tragedy that his commercial actions had caused. He had built his fortune without thinking about the human consequences of his business decisions. "What do you want me to do?" "We want you to feel the same despair that we felt, to lose everything that's important to you, like we lost." "And the girl?" "The girl is just the means. If you cooperate, she stays safe. If not—" The call ended, leaving him in total panic. Now he had to protect not only the hospitalized girl, but also the son he had just discovered existed. When he returned to the girl's room, he found her awake, looking out the window with a melancholy expression. "What are you thinking about?" he asked gently. "I was thinking if the white-haired lady from my dreams was real, or if the woman was right when she said I made things up." "Why do you think she was real?" "Because when you read stories to me, I remember her voice doing the same thing. And I remember the smell of flowers." The businessman felt something stir in his memory. There was something familiar in that description, something that touched an old memory in his mind. "Do you remember anything else about that lady?" "I remember she sang a sad song about birds, and that she cried sometimes when she looked at me." Suddenly a long-forgotten memory surfaced. His wife used to visit an orphanage on the outskirts of the city, brought donations, spent time with the children. She always came back melancholy, talking about a specific girl who had been abandoned there. "A girl so small and fragile," his wife would say, "with eyes that seemed to hold all the sadness in the world." His heart raced. Could it be possible that— "Did you ever live in a big place with many other children?" he asked carefully. "I think so. Sometimes I dream of a place like that. It had a garden with yellow flowers. The orphanage that his wife visited had a famous sunflower garden, and she always talked about the small girl who spent hours sitting among the flowers as if waiting for someone to come get her." "My God," he murmured, the realization hitting him like lightning. If his suspicions were correct, that girl wasn't just a random child who had saved his life. She was the same child that his wife had fallen in love with at the orphanage, the same one she wanted to adopt before the fatal accident. Fate had placed in his path the daughter that he and his wife never had the chance to bring home. And now, 2 years after her death, he finally had the opportunity to fulfill his beloved wife's last wish, to save that special girl. The night at the hospital was long and agonizing. The businessman didn't leave the girl's side, alternating between watching the hallway for threats and observing her peaceful face as she slept under the effect of the medication. With each passing hour, his certainty grew. That was definitely the child that his wife had visited at the orphanage. In the morning, when she woke up, he was prepared with careful questions. Do you remember a lady who visited you before you lived with the woman? A lady who wasn't old, but also wasn't young? The girl's eyes lit up. The pretty lady who smelled like roses. She came all the time, brought storybooks. His heart raced. His wife always wore rose perfume, and her passion for children's literature was known to everyone around her. Did she say anything about maybe taking you to live somewhere else? She said she was going to talk to a very important man to her, that if he agreed, I could have a real family. The girl's voice became melancholy. But then she stopped coming, and the director of the orphanage said she had gone to heaven. Tears streamed down the businessman's face. His wife had died before she could talk to him about the adoption. If the accident hadn't happened, that girl would have been his daughter for 2 years, would have grown up loved and protected, would never have known the suffering of the streets. Was the important man her husband? She asked, demonstrating surprising intuition for her 4 years. He was, and now he knows that I exist. Now he knows, and he wants very much to take care of you, like she wanted. For the first time in a long time, the girl's smile was completely genuine and full of hope. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a social worker, a middle-aged woman with a serious expression and a folder full of documents. Good morning. I'm responsible for this child's case. I need to ask some questions about your situation. During the next hour, the businessman answered detailed questions about his financial ability to care for the girl, his motivations, and his personal situation. The social worker took notes meticulously. Do you understand that taking temporary custody of a traumatized child is a huge responsibility? She asked. I understand perfectly. I have resources to provide the best medical and psychological care. Financial resources are important, but a child needs much more than money. She needs emotional stability, time, dedication. I'm prepared to give her all of that. The social worker looked at the girl who was watching the conversation attentively. And you, dear, how do you feel about staying with this gentleman? He's good to me, replied the girl without hesitation. He reads stories, brings food when I'm hungry, and he never hurts me. Never hurts you? Never. He gets sad when he sees that someone hurt me. The simplicity of the answer seemed to touch the social worker. Well, considering that the child was abandoned and we have no traces of the person who brought her here, you can take temporary custody. But there will be regular visits and constant evaluations. 2 hours later, the businessman was leaving the hospital carrying the girl in his arms, her small body still fragile from the injuries, but her eyes shining with a happiness he had never seen before. Are we going to your house? She asked, as he carefully installed her in the back seat of the car. We're going to our house, he corrected. Our house? Ours. Yours and mine. Forever, if you want. Her smile was so radiant that it illuminated the entire interior of the vehicle. When they arrived at the mansion he had bought with the profits from his investments in real estate funds, the girl was speechless. It was a large house, with a spacious garden, a swimming pool, and all the security that his wealth could provide. It's too big, she murmured, impressed. Too big for one person. That's why I need company. He took her to the room he had quickly prepared during the morning. He had hired a team of decorators to transform one of the guest rooms into a complete children's room. Walls painted in soft tones, new furniture, shelves full of books, a huge box of toys. "All this is mine?" she asked, hardly believing it. "All yours. And if there's anything you don't like, we can change it." She walked through the room as if she were in a dream, delicately touching each object, as if she feared it would disappear. "Can I sleep in the real bed?" "Of course, it's your bed." "And can I eat when I'm hungry?" "Always. We'll even prepare your favorite foods." "I don't know what my favorite foods are," she admitted. "The woman only gave what was left over. Then we'll find out together. We can try a different type of food each day." The afternoon was magical. Despite her injuries, the girl explored every corner of the house with growing curiosity. The businessman watched her, marveling at her ability to find joy in small things: the texture of a soft rug, the sound of the pool water, the smell of the new books. But the peace was interrupted when the electronic gate sounded. Through the security camera, he saw his ex-wife standing at the entrance, holding the boy's hand. "Who is it?" asked the girl, noticing his tension. "People who are also important to me. You're going to meet them." When he opened the door, his ex-wife examined him with calculating eyes. "I see you had a busy morning. Who is this child?" "Someone who's going to live with me from now on." "A wounded and traumatized child." She observed the girl's bandages with poorly disguised disdain. "That's not very smart. A troubled child can negatively affect our son." "She's not troubled, she's just a child who needs care." The boy, the businessman's biological son, watched the girl with curiosity. Slowly, he approached her. "Did you get hurt?" he asked with the naturalness typical of children. "I got hurt, but it's getting better now," replied the girl. "My mom said you're going to live here too." "I am. And you?" "I don't know yet." "Mom and Dad are talking about it." The ex-wife interrupted the children's innocent conversation. "We need to talk in private," she said to the businessman. In the living room, away from the children, the conversation was tense. "You can't be serious about adopting an unknown child right now when you've discovered you have a son." "Why can't I?" "Because our son needs full attention, resources dedicated to him. He can't compete with a stranger for your affection. There's no competition. Love isn't a limited resource. Financial resources are, and that girl clearly comes from a problematic environment. She may have psychological traumas that affect our son." "Our son?" The irony in his voice was evident. "Do you remember that you hid him from me for 2 years? I did it to protect him. And I'm doing it now, too. Protect him from what? From making impulsive, emotional decisions that could harm his future." The discussion was interrupted by the sound of laughter coming from the garden. Through the window, they saw the 2 children playing together, the boy helping the girl to sit on a garden chair due to her injuries. "They already like each other," observed the businessman. "Children adapt to any situation. That doesn't mean it's healthy." At that moment his phone rang. It was an unknown number, but he immediately recognized the rough voice. "We see you brought the girl home, and that you have another child there now." His blood ran cold. "Are you watching us?" "We're watching everything. 2 children are even better than 1. 2 ways to guarantee your cooperation. Leave the children out of this. It's too late for that. You created this situation when you decided to get involved." The ex-wife noticed his sudden paleness. "Who is it?" He hung up the phone. "We have to talk about security. There are people who may want to harm the children." "What kind of people?" "People with whom I had business conflicts in the past." "See, that's exactly the instability I was talking about. You can't expose our son to this." "Then what do you suggest?" "That I abandon the girl to protect the boy?" "I suggest you choose your priorities, your biological son or a stranger." The cruelty of the choice hit him like a stab wound. But when he looked again through the window and saw the 2 children laughing together, He knew he couldn't abandon either of them. I'm not going to choose, I'm going to protect both. Even if it puts our son at risk, I'll make sure that neither child is at risk. The ex-wife studied him for a long moment. You're different, more sentimental. That can be dangerous in business. Maybe I need to be more human in business. Humanity is a luxury that rich men can't afford. That night, after his ex-wife left, taking the boy, but promising to return the next day to continue negotiations, the businessman tucked the girl into her new bed. You're worried, she observed, demonstrating again her impressive perception. A little, but it's nothing you need to worry about. Is it because of the bad men who hurt you in the parking lot? He was surprised. How do you know they're still a problem? I heard you talking on the phone, and I saw that you had the same fear in your eyes that I used to have when the woman came home angry. The comparison struck him deeply. That child understood fear because she had lived with it constantly. Are you afraid they'll hurt you again? She asked. I'm not afraid for me. I'm afraid for you. For me? Because now you're the most important person in my life, and bad people sometimes hurt those we love to hurt us. She was quiet for a moment. Like the woman hurt you by hurting me. Exactly. But it's different here, right? Here you can protect me. I'll try with all my might, and I'll try to protect you too, like I did in the parking lot. The promise of a wounded 4-year-old child to protect a multimillionaire businessman should have sounded absurd, but somehow, coming from that special girl, it sounded like the most sincere thing in the world. As she fell asleep safely for the first time in years, the businessman knew that his life had changed forever. It was no longer just about wealth, investments, or financial success. Now it was about family, and he would do anything to protect it. 3 days passed in an almost perfect routine. The businessman had hired a discreet security team to watch the property, and for the first time since he met the girl, he felt he could relax a little. She was recovering quickly from her injuries, exploring every corner of the house with growing curiosity, and demonstrating an intelligence that surprised him daily. On Sunday morning, while they were having breakfast in the garden, she had discovered that she loved pancakes with honey. An unexpected visit arrived. The ex-wife appeared at the gate, but this time she wasn't alone. An elegant, middle-aged man accompanied her, along with the boy. "Who are they?" asked the girl, immediately noticing the tension that gripped the businessman. "People from my past," he replied, activating the electronic gate. As the group approached, the businessman realized that the unknown man was examining the property with the eyes of a professional appraiser. His ex-wife seemed visibly pleased with something. "Good morning, darling," she said with a fake smile. "This is my lawyer, Dr. Harrison Blake. He came to help resolve our family situation." The lawyer extended his hand with a firm and calculating handshake. "Pleased to meet you. Your ex-wife told me about the complexity of your current situation." "What complexity?" asked the businessman, already suspicious. "The matter of the child you informally adopted," replied the lawyer, looking at the girl with evident disapproval. "My client is concerned about the impact this may have on the custody of your biological son. The girl isn't a problem. She's part of the family now." "Part of the family?" The ex-wife laughed scornfully. "You've known that child for less than a month. You can't call her family." "I can and I do. She's going to stay with me permanently." The lawyer consulted some papers. "Interesting perspective, but legally your situation is quite fragile. The temporary custody you obtained can be revoked at any time, especially if evidence emerges that the environment isn't suitable for a traumatized child." "The environment is perfectly suitable. For one child, perhaps. For 2 children, one of whom with special needs due to trauma, it may be questionable." The girl, who had been quietly watching until then, approached the boy. "Do you want to see my room?" she asked naturally. "I can, replied the boy, and the two walked away towards the house. As soon as the children were out of sight, the conversation took a more aggressive tone. "What do you really want?" asked the businessman. "We want what's best for our son," replied the ex-wife. "And frankly, your obsession with this unknown girl is interfering with that." "Obsession? Let's be direct," interrupted the lawyer. "My client wants full custody of your son with substantial alimony. In exchange, she won't contest your decision regarding the orphaned girl. And if I don't accept, then we'll have to question your capacity for judgment. A 30-year-old single man who suddenly falls for a traumatized child, spends fortunes on gifts for her, wants to sleep in the same house." The lawyer left the implication in the air. The threat was clear. They would use his dedication to the girl to suggest inappropriate behavior, just as the abusive woman had done. "You're blackmailing me." "We're protecting our son from a potentially unstable situation," corrected the ex-wife. "You've had 2 years to get over the loss of our daughter who died in the womb. Instead, you transferred your unresolved paternal needs to a vulnerable child." The mention of their lost daughter, something he had told her in a moment of vulnerability during their marriage, was like a stab. "Leave our daughter out of this." "Why?" "It's obvious that this girl is a substitute for her. You're using a traumatized child to heal your own emotional wounds." "That's not true." "Isn't it? Then why this specific child? Why not one of the hundreds of other children in need? Because she reminds you of something, of someone." The businessman was silent because there was a seed of truth in that. His initial connection with the girl really had been intensified by the fact that she was the child his wife wanted to adopt. "Even if that's true," he said finally, "it doesn't change the fact that she needs me. And doesn't our son need you?" The ex-wife's voice became harder. "He grew up 2 years without a father. Doesn't he deserve to have your full attention now?" At that moment, the 2 children came running back, interrupting the tense conversation. The boy was excited. "Dad, she has a huge pool and a room full of books." "It's cool, right?" said the girl, smiling at the half-brother she didn't know existed. "Do you want to have lunch here?" asked the businessman, trying to normalize the situation. "Actually," said the ex-wife quickly, "we have other appointments, but we need an answer from you by tomorrow." "Answer about what?" "About our conditions. Full custody, adequate alimony, and you stop complicating the boy's life with unnecessary distractions." After they left, the businessman was alone with the girl, who immediately sensed his emotional state. "You're sad," she observed, a little worried. "Is it because of the boy? He's your son, right?" Her insight always surprised him. "How do you know?" "You have the same eyes." And the woman said, "Our son. It's true. He's my son. But I only found that out recently. And now you have to choose between him and me?" The direct question devastated him. "Why do you think that?" "Because I heard parts of the conversation. The woman doesn't like me." "It's not about liking or not liking. It's complicated. Adults always say things are complicated when they're actually simple," she said, with a disturbing wisdom. "She wants you to stay only with the boy and send me away. That's not going to happen, even if you lose your son because of me." The question made him realize the impossible weight of the decision he faced, how to choose between 2 children he loved, how to explain to a 4-year-old girl that the adult world sometimes forced cruel choices. "We're going to find a solution," he said, more to himself than to her. That afternoon, while the girl rested, he received a call that changed everything again. "We have news about the woman who abused the child," said the voice of the social worker. "What kind of news?" "We found records of her in the system. Her real name is different from what she used, and she has an extensive criminal history." "Criminal-like?" "Forgery of documents, welfare fraud, and—" The social worker paused. "Kidnapping of a minor." The businessman's heart stopped. "Kidnapping? 3 years ago, she was suspected of taking a child from an orphanage using false documents. The child was never found. The girl, it's very likely to be the same child. We're investigating records from the orphanage that your wife used to visit. The revelation confirmed all suspicions. The woman hadn't found the girl abandoned. She had kidnapped her from the orphanage, probably soon after his wife died and could no longer visit. Where is she now? She disappeared completely, but we have an arrest warrant issued. If she shows up anywhere, she'll be arrested immediately. And does this affect the girl's situation? Actually, it strengthens your case for permanent adoption. If we can prove that she was kidnapped, there's no question of family custody. She's legally an orphan, and you can adopt her officially. For the first time in days, the businessman felt a spark of hope. But the hope was quickly destroyed when his phone rang again. It was the biker's number. "Hope you enjoyed your family weekend," said the familiar voice. "What do you want?" "Monday at 8 o'clock at night. The warehouse where we met the first time. Come alone, and if I don't go, then Tuesday morning you'll find 2 missing children. And this time, neither of them will be able to save the other." The call ended, leaving him with the terrible certainty that the final confrontation was coming. He had less than 24 hours to decide how to protect the 2 children he loved, knowing that any mistake could cost their lives. Meanwhile, in her room, the girl was drawing in a new notebook he had bought for her. It was a drawing different from the previous ones. It showed 3 figures holding hands, 1 big and 2 small, but this time there were no bars or dark places. In the drawing, they were all free, all smiling, all safe. If only reality were as simple as the dreams of a child. That night, as she slept peacefully in her new bed, the businessman remained awake, planning how to turn her drawing into reality. Even if it cost everything he had built with his fortune accumulated in years of shrewd investments and successful businesses. Some things were more important than money, and he was about to discover exactly what he was willing to sacrifice for love. Monday arrived like a death sentence. The businessman spent the entire day trying to maintain a normal facade for the girl, but she perceived his growing tension. During breakfast, he barely managed to eat, and his hands trembled slightly when he poured juice for her. "Are you going out tonight?" she asked suddenly, demonstrating once again her ability to read people. "I may need to take care of some work matters." "Dangerous matters?" The direct question caught him off guard. "Why do you think they're dangerous?" "Because you have the same expression that you had at the hospital when you talked on the phone with the bad men." He knelt down next to her, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes adults need to solve difficult problems to protect those they love. Like when I shouted in the parking lot to save you. Exactly like that. But now I can really help you, can't I? You've already helped me more than you imagine. Just by being here, being happy, you give me strength to face anything. During the afternoon, he made careful preparations. First, he called the head of the security team. "I want full surveillance on the property tonight. If something happens to me, the first priority is to protect the girl. Is something going to happen? I hope not. But if it does, you have instructions to immediately contact my lawyer and the social worker." Then he wrote a detailed letter explaining the entire situation, the girl's kidnapping from the orphanage, the abuse she suffered, his connection with his late wife, and above all, his instructions for her to be adopted by a loving family if something happened to him. He sealed the letter and left it in his office safe, along with specific instructions about his investments and wealth. Most of his fortune would be destined to care for the girl and the son he had recently discovered. Around 5 in the afternoon, his ex-wife appeared again, this time with a triumphant expression that immediately alerted him. "I came to get our final answer," she said, entering without an invitation. "I'm still considering the options." "There are no options. It's either accept our conditions or face a legal battle that you're going to lose." "And why are you so sure I'm going to lose?" She smiled with calculating coldness. Because I discovered some interesting things about your current situation. For example, that you're being investigated for suspicion of inappropriate behavior with minors. That was dropped. There was no basis. Was it? How interesting. She took some papers from her bag. Because according to my information, the investigation remains active. And I also discovered that you have dangerous enemies who make threats against you. His blood ran cold. How do you know this? I have my resources. And the question is, a man under criminal investigation and threatened by criminals is really the suitable person to raise 2 children. Are you following me? I'm protecting our son. And I discovered that your obsession with that girl has put both children in real danger. At that moment, the girl appeared in the room, drawn by the raised voices. She looked from the ex-wife to the businessman, immediately perceiving the tension. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly. "Everything's fine, honey," he replied, trying to reassure her. "Why don't you go play in the garden?" But instead of leaving, she approached closer, as if she wanted to protect him. The ex-wife observed the interaction with evident contempt. "See that? A 4-year-old child trying to protect an adult. That's not normal. It's a sign of severe psychological trauma. She's recovering very well." "Is she? Or are you so emotionally involved that you can't see the problems?" The ex-wife bent down to be at the girl's level. "Honey, do you know that there are other people who could take care of you? People specialized in helping children who have been through bad situations?" The girl's eyes filled with fear. "I don't want to leave." "No one is talking about leaving," said the businessman quickly. "Not yet," corrected the ex-wife. "But maybe it would be better for everyone if you went to a family that could dedicate full attention to your problems." "I don't have problems," said the girl, her voice becoming small. "Of course you do, honey. All children who have gone through what you've gone through have problems, and sometimes it's selfishness on the part of adults to pretend they can solve everything alone." The businessman saw the impact of the cruel words on the girl's face. She began to withdraw, returning to the frightened behavior she had demonstrated in the early days. "Stop it," he said firmly. "Stop what? The truth? You're using that child to fill a void in your life without considering what's best for her. What's best for her is love, stability, and security, things I can offer. Can you? With criminals threatening your home, with pending criminal investigations, with an ex-wife fighting for the custody of your son?" The girl was looking from one to the other, clearly trying to understand the discussion that could determine her future. The businessman saw tears forming in her eyes. "You know what I think?" continued the ex-wife. "I think you're compensating for the guilt of not having saved our first daughter by trying to save that girl. But that's not love. It's therapy at the expense of a vulnerable child." The accusation was devastating because there was a hint of truth in it. His initial connection with the girl really had been intensified by the connection with his dead wife and the daughter they lost. "Even if it were true," he said, "that doesn't change the fact that she needs me now. And doesn't our son? Does not he?" At that moment, his phone rang. It was almost 7 in the evening, an hour before the scheduled meeting with the bikers. But it wasn't them. It was the social worker. "We have urgent news about the girl's case," she said. "We found the woman." "You found her?" "She tried to kidnap another child from an orphanage in another city. She was caught in the act. And she confessed everything about the girl you're taking care of." "Confessed what?" "That she really was kidnapped from the orphanage 3 years ago, and more. We discovered that your wife had started the adoption papers for the girl before she passed away. Legally, you were already the designated adoptive parents." The revelation hit him like lightning. "That means—" "It means that the girl is legally your daughter. The adoption just wasn't finalized because of your wife's death, but the papers are still valid." He looked at the girl, who was watching him with cautious hope, and then at his ex-wife, whose expression had changed from triumphant to furious. "There's more," continued the social worker, the woman also revealed information about some people who were looking for the girl. Apparently, there's a group of men who believe that you're responsible for their financial problems. The bikers. They contacted the woman in prison, offering money for information about your routine and about the people important to you. His heart raced. If they had spoken with the abusive woman, they knew exactly how to hit him where it hurt most. "I need to hang up," he said quickly. "Thank you for the information." When he hung up, his ex-wife was glaring at him. "So she really is your legal daughter," she said bitterly. "That complicates things." "Complicates or simplifies? It means you're not going to give her up, regardless of the consequences." "Exactly. Even if it means losing our son." Before he could answer, all the phones in the house began to ring simultaneously. The security system issued an alert, and lights turned on throughout the property. Through the window, he saw several motorcycles surrounding the house. The bikers had decided not to wait for the scheduled meeting. They had come to him. And now, with 2 children in the house and his ex-wife as a witness, everything he had tried to protect was in mortal danger. The girl ran into his arms, trembling with fear. "It's them, isn't it? The bad men?" "Yes," he admitted, hugging her tightly. "But I won't let them hurt you." "What if you can't protect us?" The innocent question summed up all his fears. He had built a fortune, amassed wealth through smart investments and shrewd business deals, but no amount of money could guarantee the safety of the family he had found. Now he needed to discover if his love for them was strong enough to overcome men motivated by revenge, and the time for that discovery had come. The sound of the engines grew around the property like a swarm of angry bees. The businessman ran to the window and counted at least 8 motorcycles surrounding the mansion. More than the 5 men from the first encounter. They had brought reinforcements. "Call security!" he yelled to his ex-wife, but she was paralyzed with terror, huddled on the sofa. "The security guys should be on their way," he said more to himself, activating all the house's protection systems. Electronic gates closed automatically, security cameras positioned themselves, and the external lights turned on, illuminating the entire property. The girl clung to his shirt, trembling. "They came because of me, didn't they?" "No, honey, they came because of me, for things I did before I met you. But they'll hurt me to hurt you like the woman did." The child's frightening perception made him realize that she understood the situation perfectly. She had seen enough violence to recognize the patterns. A loudspeaker began to echo from outside. "We know you're in there, rich man, and we know you have the 2 kids with you." His heart froze. How did they know about the boy? "We have a simple proposal," the amplified voice continued. "You come out alone and we talk like men, or we come in there and talk in front of the children." "Don't go," whispered the girl. "Please, don't leave me alone with them." The ex-wife finally reacted. "Where are the security guards you hired? Why haven't they arrived yet?" As if in response to her question, gunshots began to echo from outside. There weren't many, but enough to indicate that some kind of confrontation was happening at the gates of the property. "The guards are trying to get here," he said, picking up the phone to call 911. But the line was dead. They cut the communications. How did they manage that? These aren't common criminals. These are men who have lost everything, who have nothing left to lose. That makes them much more dangerous. The loudspeaker echoed again. "You have 5 minutes to come out voluntarily. After that, we're coming in. And when we come in, we won't have patience for civilized conversation anymore." The businessman looked around the room, his mind working quickly. The house had a robust security system, but it wasn't a fortress. If the men really wanted to get in, they eventually would. "Is there a safe place in the house?" asked his ex-wife, finally taking a protective stance. "Some kind of safe room?" "Yes, in the basement. It has independent communication and can be locked from the inside." "Then let's go there." "It won't work. They know we're here. They know how many of us there are. If we hide, they'll simply wait or find a way to get us out of there." "Then what do you suggest?" The businessman looked at the girl, who was watching him with absolute trust, as if she believed he could solve anything. The responsibility of that look crushed him and strengthened him simultaneously. "I'm going out to talk to them." "No," cried the girl, clinging to him with desperate force. "You can't. They'll hurt you." "Sometimes that's what adults do, honey. They take risks to protect those they love, like I did in the parking lot, exactly like you did." The ex-wife approached. "You can't go out there. They'll kill you." "Maybe. But if I stay here, they'll break in and could hurt all three of you. At least if I go out, you'll be safe. And then what? What happens to us then?" It was a valid question. If something happened to him, the two children would be orphans again. But if he didn't act, they could all die. "There's a letter in my safe deposit box," he told the ex-wife. "If anything happens, it explains everything about the girl's situation and makes provisions for your future." At that moment, a small explosion echoed from somewhere in the house. They had started to force their way in. "They're coming in!" shouted the ex-wife. "Listen," said the businessman quickly, kneeling down to be at the girl's level. "I need you to go to the safe room in the basement. You'll be safe there. And you? I'll take care of this." "That's a lie," said the girl with her brutal honesty. "You're going to sacrifice yourself for us." The word sacrifice, uttered by a 4-year-old, hit him like a punch. "Where did you learn that word?" "From the stories you read to me. Sometimes heroes sacrifice themselves to save other people." "I'm not a hero, honey. I'm just a man who makes mistakes and is trying to fix them. To me, you're a hero. Ever since that night in the parking lot." Tears streamed down his face. How had he reached the point where a 4-year-old needed to comfort him? Another explosion, closer this time. They had managed to get past the first security system. "You have 2 minutes!" shouted the voice from outside, now without amplification. They were close enough to be heard naturally. "Go to the basement, now." "We're not leaving you alone," said the girl. "I'll go with them," said the ex-wife quickly. "But you have to come too. If I go with you, they'll corner us there. At least if I go out, you have a chance." At that moment, the front door exploded. 5 men entered the house, wearing leather jackets and helmets, carrying pieces of wood and some tools that clearly could be used as weapons. The leader, the one who had spoken in the parking lot, removed his helmet, revealing a man of about 40 years old, with scars on his face and eyes full of hatred. "Finally, we meet at home, rich man." The businessman placed himself in front of the 2 children and the ex-wife. "Leave them out of this. Your problem is with me. Our problem has always been with you. But we've discovered that the best way to make a man suffer is through the people he loves. I'll go with you. I'll go wherever you want. Just leave them alone." The leader laughed cruelly. "You think it's that simple? You shattered our families. Why should we spare yours? Because they're innocent. These children have never done anything to anyone. My brother was also innocent when he killed himself because of your greed." The mention of suicide hit the businessman deeply. He had built his fortune through aggressive business practices, always focusing on profit and growth of his assets without fully considering the human consequences. "I'm sorry for the loss of your brother," he said sincerely. "But how will destroying more lives bring him back? It won't, but it will give us the satisfaction of knowing that you felt the same despair that we did." One of the other men approached. "Enough talk. We came here to deliver justice." It was at that moment that something extraordinary happened. The girl, who had hidden behind the businessman during the entire conversation, took a step forward. "Please," she said with her small voice, "don't hurt him." The men stopped, surprised by the child's intervention. "He's a good person," she continued. "He saved me when I was getting hurt. He gave me a home, food, storybooks. He never hit me, never cursed at me." "Girl, you don't understand," said the leader, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "This man did bad things to other people." "Everyone does bad things sometimes," she replied with devastating simplicity. "But he's trying to do good things now. Isn't that what matters?" The silence that followed was profound. The men looked at each other, clearly not prepared to face the innocent logic of a child. "If you hurt him," continued the girl, "I'll be alone again. And I promise that I'll remember you forever as the bad people who took my daddy away from me." The word daddy echoed through the room like an emotional bomb. It was the first time she had called him that, and she did it in front of men who wanted to kill him. The businessman felt his knees weaken. He looked down and saw the girl extending her small hand to him, a gesture of protection and unity that perfectly mirrored what she had done that night in the parking lot. "Girl," said the leader in a softer voice, "you don't understand the things this man has done." "I understand that he loves me," she replied, "and that I love him, and that people who love each other protect each other." At that moment, sirens began to sound in the distance. The private security had managed to call for reinforcements, or maybe the neighbors had reported the gunshots. The men heard the approaching sounds and looked at each other nervously. "We have to go," said one of them, but the leader didn't move. He was staring at the girl, who kept her small hand extended to the businessman. "You really love her?" he asked. "With all my life." "And you'd do anything for her?" "Anything." The leader was silent for a long moment, the sirens getting closer and closer. "Then let's make a different deal." The sirens were getting closer, but the leader of the bikers remained still, his eyes fixed on the brave little figure of the girl who still held out her hand to the businessman. "What kind of deal?" asked the businessman cautiously. "You're going to use your fortune to do something for the men who lost their jobs because of you. You're going to create real opportunities for them to rebuild their lives. And in exchange, we leave your family alone, permanently." One of the other bikers protested. "That's not justice. He needs to pay for what he did." "Shut up," roared the leader. "We've had enough suffering. This child reminded me of something I forgot." "What?" "My own daughter. She was also 4 years old when we lost everything." His voice became softer, loaded with an old pain. "And she also defended me when I was wrong, because children love without judging." The businessman realized that there was a deeper story there. "What happened to your daughter?" "When we lost the company, we lost the house too. My wife left with her, said I was a failure. I haven't seen my girl in 2 years. Tears began to stream down the man's marked face. "And here I am, ready to make another child an orphan." The girl, demonstrating a compassion that impressed with its maturity, approached the leader. "Do you miss your daughter?" "I do, little one. Every day." "Then you understand why I don't want them to hurt my daddy." The man knelt down to be at her level. "I understand, yes, and I apologize for scaring you." The sirens stopped outside the house. Loud voices began to approach. The security had arrived with police reinforcements. "We need to decide this now," said the leader to the businessman. "Do you accept our deal? What guarantees do I have that you'll keep your part?" The word of a man who just remembered why it's worth fighting for life, not death. The businessman looked at the girl, who nodded gravely, as if she understood that the future of the whole family depended on that decision. "I accept, but I want specific details about how I can help. We'll discuss this at another time, in another place. Away from children and guns." "You in there!" shouted an amplified voice from outside. "The house is surrounded. Come out with your hands up." The leader got up quickly. "Is there a way out in the back?" "Yes, through the gardens." "Then that's where we're going. But before—" He turned to the girl. "Thank you for reminding me of who I used to be. Are you going to try to find your daughter?" "I will. And when I find her, I'll tell her about a very brave girl who saved an entire family just with her kindness." The bikers left quickly through the back door, disappearing into the darkness of the garden. Moments later, the private security and the police broke into the house, finding only the shaken but unharmed family. During the next 2 hours, they gave detailed statements about what had happened. The ex-wife, visibly transformed by the experience, remained by the businessman's side throughout the process, supporting his version of the facts. "They really left peacefully?" asked one of the investigators. "The girl convinced them," explained the businessman. She has a special gift for touching people's hearts." When they were finally alone, it was almost midnight. The girl had fallen asleep on the sofa, exhausted by the trauma of the day. The ex-wife was making tea in the kitchen, and the businessman sat next to the child who had saved his life once again. "She's extraordinary," said the ex-wife, returning with the cups. "What she did today, I've never seen anything like it. She saved all of us. And you saved her first. Maybe I was wrong about many things." "How so?" The ex-wife sat in the armchair across from him, carefully choosing her words. "When I married you, it was for love. But when I left, it was out of fear." "Fear of what?" "Fear of poverty, of instability, of not being able to give our son everything I wanted him to have." She paused, looking at the sleeping girl. "But seeing how you take care of her, how she trusts you, I realize that I was wrong about what really matters." "And what changed?" "Tonight I saw you willing to die for a child who isn't even biologically yours. I saw you choose love instead of financial security. And I saw what kind of man you really are when it matters. Does that mean?" "It means I want to try again. Not for the money, not for the financial security, but because I want our son to grow up knowing this man that I saw tonight." The businessman was silent for a long moment. "And the girl?" "The girl is part of you now. Any family we build has to include her. Even with all the challenges that will bring, especially because of the challenges. She'll teach our son things that no school can teach, about courage, about forgiveness, about unconditional love." They talked until late, carefully planning how to build an unconventional family that would work for everyone. There were many obstacles ahead. Legal issues, emotional adjustment, the need for therapy for all the children involved. The next morning, the girl woke up earlier than everyone and found the businessman preparing breakfast. "Are you okay?" she asked, noticing that he was moving slowly. "I'm great, thanks to you. Did I do something special last night?" "You saved our family, honey, the way you always do, with love. The men won't bother us anymore." "No, and you know why? Because you helped them remember something important." "What?" "That everyone needs love, even when they're very angry." The girl smiled, satisfied with the simple explanation. "And now are we going to be a real family? We're going to be a very special family. You, me, your brother, and your new mom." "Brother?" "The boy you met. He's your brother at heart now." Her eyes sparkled with pure joy. "I always wanted to have a brother, and he always needed a brave sister like you." During breakfast, the ex-wife arrived with the boy, who ran immediately to hug the girl. "Dad told me you were very brave last night," he said excitedly. "I just did what you would have done if you were here," she replied. "Are we going to be real siblings now?" "We are." Watching the two children playing in the garden an hour later, the businessman reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with desperate cries in a dark parking lot. His fortune accumulated through smart investments had been important, but he had discovered that true wealth was in those simple moments. Children's laughter, second chances, families that chose each other. "You know what impresses me most about her?" said his ex-wife, watching the girl teach something to the boy. "What?" "After everything she's been through, she still believes that people are fundamentally good, that everyone deserves love and forgiveness. It's a rare gift, it's a miracle, and now it's our job to protect that purity as she grows." That afternoon, they received an unexpected visit. It was the leader of the bikers, but now he was alone, without a helmet, wearing simple clothes and carrying a small suitcase. "I came to fulfill my part of the agreement," he said when the businessman opened the door. "Which part?" "To talk about how you can help the men who lost their jobs. And also, He hesitated to ask for advice. What kind of advice? About how a man who made mistakes can try to win back his daughter. The girl, who had heard voices at the door, appeared in the room. When she saw the man, her face lit up. "You came to visit us." "I did, little one, and I brought something for you." He opened the suitcase and took out a small, well-cared-for doll. "This was my daughter's. She would like another special girl to play with it now." The girl accepted the doll with reverence, as if she knew she was receiving something very precious. "What's her name?" "Hope," replied the man with a choked voice, "because that's what you gave me last night." And as the girl hugged the doll and the man wiped tears from his eyes, the businessman understood that his journey of redemption was just beginning. He had learned that sometimes it is the smallest people who have the greatest ability to heal a broken world, and that true love is not measured in dollars or assets, but in moments like that, when strangers become family and enemies find forgiveness through the innocent eyes of a child. 3 months had passed since the night of the confrontation, and life in the mansion had found an almost perfect rhythm. The businessman had fulfilled his promise, creating a foundation to help small business owners who had been affected by the aggressive expansion of his businesses. A significant part of his wealth was now dedicated to social projects, transforming his wealth into an instrument of reparation. The girl had adapted to the new family routine with an ease that surprised all the therapists. She and the boy had developed a genuine sibling connection, protecting each other and sharing daily discoveries about what it meant to have a real family. On that Thursday morning, while they were having breakfast in the garden, the ex-wife, now just wife again, after an intimate wedding the previous month, watched the 2 children with a thoughtful smile. "What are you thinking about?" asked the businessman. "I was thinking about how our definition of happiness has changed," she replied. 6 months ago, happiness for me meant financial security, social status, a predictable life. And now it's this." She gestured towards the children playing among the flowers. "It's knowing that we wake up every day with people who truly love us, even with all the challenges we still face, especially because of them. The challenges have made us grow." The girl, who had finished playing, approached the table. "Daddy, today is the day of the special visit, isn't it?" "Yes, it is, honey. Are you excited?" "I am. I want to show her how well I'm growing." The special visit was from the social worker, who came monthly to assess how the definitive adoption process was going. Despite all the legal documents already being approved, the follow-up continued to ensure that she was developing properly in her new family. What if she asks about the nightmares? The girl had had some episodes during the transition, moments when she woke up crying, remembering the time with the abusive woman. You'll tell the truth, that they're getting rarer, and that when they happen you have an entire family to comfort you. And about the scars? The businessman knelt down to be at her level. The physical scars were almost imperceptible now, but he knew she was also referring to the emotional scars. The scars are part of your story, honey. They don't define who you are, but they remind you of where you came from and how strong you were to get here. Like courage medals. Exactly like courage medals. Around noon, the social worker arrived, accompanied by a child psychologist whom the businessman didn't know. This made him slightly worried. Changes in the evaluation routine could indicate problems. "Good morning," greeted the social worker. "This is Dr. Hayes, a specialist in childhood trauma. She came to do an independent assessment for the final report." Final report. If everything goes well today, this will be our last mandatory visit. The adoption will be considered completely finalized. The businessman's heart filled with hope and nervousness simultaneously. After months of legal procedures, visitations, and assessments, they could finally make official what they already knew in their hearts, that they were a real family. During the next hour, Dr. Hayes spoke individually with each family member, First with the businessman and his wife, asking detailed questions about routine, challenges, future plans, and especially how they were dealing with the girl's special needs. "Does she still have anxiety episodes?" asked the psychologist. "Occasionally," admitted the wife. "Especially when there are changes in the routine or when she meets people who remind her of the past." "How do you deal with these episodes?" "With patience, love, and a lot of dialogue," replied the businessman. "She's learning to verbalize her fears instead of keeping them to herself, and the relationship with her adopted brother. It's extraordinary," said the wife with genuine pride. "They protect each other, share everything, and she teaches him about empathy while he teaches her about normal childhood games." Next, the psychologist spoke with the boy, asking about his feelings towards his new sister and how he had adapted to the family change. "She's the best sister in the world," he said without hesitating. "She always shares everything with me, protects me when I have nightmares, and teaches me things that only she knows." "What kind of things?" "How to be brave when I'm scared, how to forgive people who do bad things, and how to make other people feel loved." Finally, it was the girl's turn. The conversation lasted almost an hour, with the psychologist asking careful questions about her feelings, memories, fears, and hopes. "Do you feel safe in this house?" asked Dr. Hayes. "I feel like the safest person in the whole world," replied the girl with absolute conviction. "And when you remember the bad things that happened before, I still get sad sometimes. But now I know that bad things can end, and that very good things can come after them." "Like what good things?" "Like having a daddy who reads stories, a mommy who makes pancakes, a brother who plays with me, a beautiful house, and people who love me even when I do wrong things." "Do you do many wrong things?" "I do some, like every kid. But in this family, when I do wrong, they teach me how to do better next time instead of hitting me." The simplicity of the answer contained a depth that visibly touched the psychologist. "If you could change anything in your current life, what would it be?" The girl thought carefully. "I wish all the children who suffer like I used to suffer could find families like mine." "Anything else?" "I wish the woman who hurt me could learn to be happy without hurting other people." The child's capacity for forgiveness moved all the adults. After 4 years living with violence and neglect, she was still able to wish well-being for those who had mistreated her. When the evaluations were over, everyone gathered in the living room for the final verdict. "I rarely see such a successful adaptation," began Dr. Hayes. "This child has not only recovered from the trauma she suffered, but has flourished in an extraordinary way." "Does that mean?" asked the businessman, barely daring to hope. "It means that you have created an exemplary family environment. The girl demonstrates emotional security, healthy expression skills, solid emotional bonds, and, above all, hope for the future." The social worker opened her file. "Based on this final assessment, I officially declare the adoption process complete. The girl is legally your daughter in every way." Tears streamed down the faces of all the adults. The girl, realizing that something very important had happened, asked, "Does this mean that no one can ever take me away from you again?" "Never again," confirmed the businessman, hugging her tightly. "Now you are our daughter forever. And can I call you Daddy and Mommy always?" "You can and should," said the wife, joining the hug. "And will my brother continue to be my brother forever too?" "Forever and ever," confirmed the boy, hugging the whole family. That afternoon, after the visitors left, there was a small celebration in the garden. The businessman had a special cake made with the phrase, "Welcome to the family forever," and even some neighbors joined the celebration. During the party, an unexpected surprise arrived. The ex-leader of the bikers appeared at the gate, but this time he wasn't alone. A girl of approximately 8 years old was by his side, holding his hand shyly. "Sorry to interrupt," he said when the businessman came to answer, "but I wanted to share some good news." "This is your daughter." "It is. I got visitation rights back 2 weeks ago, and today she agreed to spend the weekend with me." His voice was full of pride and gratitude. "I wanted to thank you again for helping me remember what really matters. Daddy told me about the brave girl who lives here," said his daughter shyly. "Can I meet her?" "Of course you can," replied the businessman, calling his adopted daughter. When the two girls met, it was like watching an encounter between two little heroines. One had saved a family with courage, the other had given her father a second chance through forgiveness. "Do you want to play in the garden?" offered the businessman's daughter. "Can I? Daddy, can I?" "Of course you can," replied the man with tears in his eyes as he heard his daughter call him Daddy again. While the children played, the two men talked about the foundation's projects. Several of the former employees of the companies that had gone bankrupt were now employed in new businesses funded by the reparation fund that the businessman had created. "You know what impresses me most?" said the ex-biker. "How a 4-year-old managed to break a cycle of hatred that was destroying several families." "She has a special gift for seeing the best in people," agreed the businessman, "and for making us see that best in ourselves too." When the small party ended and everyone left, the family gathered in the living room to talk about the special day. "How do you feel knowing that you are officially siblings now?" asked the wife. "Happy," the two children replied in unison, making everyone laugh. "And you?" asked the girl to her parents. "How do you feel being officially my parents?" "Complete," replied the businessman. "For the first time in my life, I feel truly complete. Even having less money now because of the foundation." The question showed how she had absorbed the family conversations about the financial changes that came with the social reparation projects. "Especially because of that," he replied. "I discovered that true wealth is not measured in accumulated assets but in transformed lives. Like my life was transformed. Like all our lives were transformed. Each of us has become a better person because of this family." That night, as he put the two children to sleep, the businessman reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with cries of despair in a dark parking lot. His fortune, built over years through smart investments in stocks and properties, had proved less important than he had imagined. The real investment of his life had been in love, in second chances, in the human capacity for healing and forgiveness. And the dividends of that investment were measured in children's smiles, reunited families, and the peace of knowing that he had helped make the world a slightly better place. When he turned off the lights in the children's room, he heard the girl whisper to her brother, "Thank you for helping me have the best family in the world." "Thank you for teaching me what it means to be truly brave," he replied. And the businessman knew that regardless of all the challenges that were still to come, his family had found something that no money in the world could buy: true and unconditional love. 6 months after the adoption was officialized, a letter arrived that would once again change the course of the family. The businessman received it on a Saturday morning while the two children were playing in the garden and his wife was preparing lunch. The official envelope bore the letterhead of the state penitentiary system. "Who sends letters from prison?" asked his wife, noticing his worried expression. "I don't know. I'll read it first before commenting." The letter was from the woman who had abused the girl. Handwritten with trembling handwriting, it contained only a few lines, but each word seemed to carry the weight of months of reflection in the cell. "Sir, I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I need to know if the girl is okay. Not to interfere, but to be able to sleep at night, knowing that she has found the family she always deserved. If you can, tell her that I'm sorry. More than words can express. MS." The businessman stared at the letter for a long time. Part of him wanted to simply tear it up and forget it had ever existed, but another part, influenced by the capacity for forgiveness that his adopted daughter demonstrated daily, made him consider a response. "Who's it from?" insisted his wife. "From the woman who mistreated our daughter." Her face hardened. "What does she want?" "To know if our girl is okay. And to apologize. After everything she did, now she wants to redeem herself. Maybe, or maybe it's just manipulation, I'm not sure. At that moment the girl ran into the kitchen, sweaty and happy from playing. "Daddy, can you come see the house that my brother and I built in the tree?" "Of course, honey. I'll be right there." She ran out again, and the couple watched through the window as she helped her brother climb onto a small platform they had set up among the branches. "Look at her," said the wife softly. "Happy, safe, full of life. That's what that woman needs to know." "Do you think I should answer?" "I think our daughter would answer. She always chooses forgiveness over revenge." During lunch, the businessman carefully observed his family. The two children were talking animatedly about plans for the upcoming school vacation. His wife contributed with suggestions, always attentive to the specific emotional needs of each child. It was a scene of domestic normality that a year ago would have seemed impossible. "Daddy, you're quiet today," observed the girl, once again demonstrating her ability to perceive subtle changes in people's moods. "I'm just thinking about some things." "Worrying things?" "Things about forgiveness and second chances." "Oh, that's easy," she said naturally. "Everyone deserves second chances. Even third and fourth if they need them. Even people who have done very bad things, especially those, because they are the ones who most need to learn to do good things." The simplicity of her life philosophy never ceased to impress him. A child who had suffered so much still maintained an unwavering faith in the human capacity for change. "And if a person who hurt you a lot apologized, would you forgive them?" The girl stopped eating and thought seriously about the question. "I would forgive them, but I wouldn't go back to live with them," she said finally. "Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or putting yourself in danger again. It means not keeping anger in your heart." The depth of the answer left the adults silent. It was a distinction that many adults took years to understand, but that she had developed naturally as a mechanism for emotional survival. That afternoon, the businessman decided to respond to the letter. He wrote carefully, choosing each word. "The girl is very well. She has grown up, she is healthy, she goes to school, she has friends, and above all, she knows that she is loved unconditionally. She taught me that forgiving is a strength, not a weakness. Therefore, I accept your apologies, not for you, but for her, because I know that is what she would do." At the end of the letter, he attached a recent photo of the family, the four of them together in the garden, all smiling genuinely. It was an image that showed not only that the girl was well, but that she had found her place in the world. A week later, an unexpected response arrived. The woman had sent something that would forever change the family's understanding of the girl's past. It was a small envelope containing a single faded photo and an original birth certificate. The photo showed a much younger version of the woman holding a baby. But the most shocking thing was the expression on her face. There was genuine love there, care, maternal protection. It was like looking at a completely different person. The certificate revealed the most surprising truth of all. The woman had not kidnapped the girl from the orphanage. She really was her biological aunt, sister of the mother who had died in childbirth. And in the first 2 years of the child's life, she had been a loving and dedicated caregiver. A second letter explained the rest of the story. "When my sister died, I promised to take care of the girl as if she were my own daughter, and I kept that promise for 2 happy years. But then I lost my job, my house, my husband left me. I started drinking to forget the pain, and the drink turned me into a monster. When I realized what I was doing to her, it was too late. The love I felt was corroded by alcohol and bitterness. I know this doesn't excuse anything, but it explains how a person who loved that child could hurt her so much." The revelation completely transformed the family's perspective on the situation. The woman was not a stranger who had kidnapped a child. She was an aunt who had loved and cared for her niece until she was consumed by her own demons. "Does this change anything?" asked the wife. "It doesn't change what she did," replied the businessman, "but it helps to understand why our daughter has always shown this extraordinary ability to forgive. Somewhere deep in her memory, she remembers having been loved by this woman. Should we tell her? We're going to let her decide if she wants to know. She deserves to have control over her own story." When they presented the situation to the girl, her reaction was typical of her exceptional emotional maturity. "Can I see the photo?" she asked calmly. She studied the image for a long time, running her little fingers over the face of the younger woman. "I remember her," she said finally. "Not the bad woman, but this one. She sang to me and gave me warm baths. How do you feel knowing that she was your real aunt?" "I'm sad that she got sick inside," she replied. "But I'm happy knowing that someone loved me before you found me. Would you like to maybe write a letter to her?" The girl thought for a moment. "Can I draw a picture?" "Of course you can." She spent the rest of the afternoon creating a special drawing. It showed two versions of the same woman, one dark and scary, another colorful and smiling. Between them, she had drawn a little girl with her arms extended to both figures. At the bottom, in her still childish handwriting, she wrote, "Thank you for loving me when I was little. I hope you get well and learn to love yourself too." When the businessman saw the drawing, he understood once again why his daughter was so special. She had managed to visually express something that psychologists take years to teach patients, that people can contain both light and darkness, and that it is possible to forgive the bad acts while remembering the good acts. They sent the drawing along with an updated letter about how the girl was progressing in school, her favorite games, and above all, how she had found safety and love in her new family. The answer came 3 weeks later, but this time it wasn't from the woman. It was from the prison administration, informing them that she had started an intensive program of rehabilitation for alcohol addiction and psychological therapy. The girl's drawing was hanging on the wall of her cell, and according to the counselors, it had been a turning point in her recovery process. "She's trying to heal," said the businessman to the family during dinner. "That's good," replied the girl simply. "Everyone deserves a chance to get better." That night, as he put the children to sleep, the businessman reflected on the latest revelations. His family had been built on the ruins of other families, his own, which had been destroyed by the death of his first wife, the ex-wives, fragmented by financial insecurity, the bikers, devastated by bankruptcy, and the girls, lost when her mother died and her aunt succumbed to addiction. But from all these losses had emerged something new and beautiful. Not only his family, but an entire network of people who were learning to heal old wounds through forgiveness and second chances. His fortune, accumulated over years through careful investments in stocks and properties, had become the instrument of this collective healing. But the real catalyst had been a 4-year-old girl who had refused to let suffering make her bitter. "Daddy?" The girl's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Yes, honey? Thank you for saving me that night in the parking lot. But it was you who saved me." "Then we saved each other," she said with a sleepy smile. "That's how it works in real families, right? Everyone saves each other a little." As she drifted off to sleep, the businessman knew he had received the most perfect definition of family he had ever heard, and that his daughter, once again, had found the right words to explain the miracle that had transformed their lives. A whole year had passed since the letter from prison, and the family's life had found a peaceful and predictable routine. The girl, now 5 years old, attended kindergarten, where she was known for her extraordinary kindness to other children. The boy, also 4 years old, had become her natural protector, always attentive when she became anxious in new situations. The businessman had completely restructured his businesses, keeping only the essential investments and dedicating most of his time to the foundation. His wealth, although less than in the past, was now managed with a clear social purpose. Every profit from the funds was directed towards family support and social reintegration projects. One Tuesday morning, while they were preparing breakfast together, a tradition they had developed where each person contributed something. A call came that would change everything once again. It was the director of the orphanage where his late first wife used to volunteer. "Sir, I apologize for disturbing you, but a very delicate situation has arisen that involves your family." The businessman's heart raced. "Oh, what kind of situation?" "A woman came here yesterday, asking about children who were taken from the orphanage in recent years. When she found out about your adopted daughter, she claims to be the girl's biological grandmother." The news hit him like a lightning bolt. Biological grandmother? According to her, she is the mother of the woman who died in childbirth. She lived abroad and has only now returned to the country. She says she has spent years looking for her granddaughter. Does she have any proof? She brought documents, old photos, birth certificates. Everything seems legitimate, and... The director hesitated. "She wants to meet the girl." The businessman sat down heavily in the kitchen chair. His wife, realizing the gravity of the conversation, approached with a worried expression. "What exactly does she want?" he asked. "For now, just to meet her granddaughter. She didn't mention custody or legal changes, but she also didn't rule out those possibilities." After hanging up, the businessman explained the situation to his wife. The two children had gone out to play in the garden, so they could talk openly. "This could change everything," she said, clearly shaken. "It could. A biological grandmother would have significant legal rights. And our daughter? How would she react to yet another twist in her life? I don't know. She demonstrates an incredible ability to adapt, but she has already been through enough trauma. Do we have to tell her? Not yet. First, I need to meet this woman, understand her real intentions." That afternoon, after dropping the children off at school, the couple drove to the orphanage for the meeting that could change the destiny of their family. The woman waiting for them was about 60 years old, with carefully combed grey hair, elegant but simple clothes, and eyes that carried a mixture of hope and deep suffering. When she saw them, she stood up immediately. "You must be the adoptive parents of my granddaughter," she said, with a voice trembling with emotion. "We are her parents, yes," corrected the businessman, emphasizing the difference. "Of course, I apologize. I know you raised her, that she is your daughter in every important sense." The respectful way she approached the situation slightly decreased the initial tension. "The director said you have documents proving the relationship," said the wife. "I do, yes." The woman opened a carefully organized folder. "This is the birth certificate of my daughter, who died giving birth to the girl. These are photos from when she was little. You can see the resemblance. And this is my passport, showing that I was living in Italy when everything happened." The documents were convincing. The photos showed a young woman with features very similar to the girl's, the same large and expressive eyes, the same delicate face shape. "Why did it take you so long to look for your granddaughter?" asked the businessman. The woman took a deep breath before answering. "When my daughter died, I collapsed. I couldn't even attend the funeral. My son-in-law, the girl's father, also died shortly after. Car accident caused by despair over the loss. I went to Europe to try to heal, but there was so much suffering that it took me years to be able to return. And when you came back, I found out that my sister had taken custody of the girl, but then I learned that she had developed problems with alcohol. When I finally found her in prison and she told me the truth about what she had done, her voice broke. I've spent the last year trying to track down where my granddaughter had ended up." "What exactly do you want now?" asked the wife directly. "I want to meet her, to see with my own eyes that she is well, safe, loved. I want her to know that she has a biological family that loves her too. And then, I don't know. It depends on many things, on how she reacts to me, on how you feel, on what's best for her." The honesty of the answer was surprising. There were no demands, no legal threats, just the genuine desire of a grandmother to meet her granddaughter. "Is she happy with you?" asked the woman. "Very happy," replied the businessman. "She has completely recovered from the trauma she suffered. She has a brother who adores her. She is doing well in school. She has friends. And you? Are you happy with her?" "She is the light of our lives," said the wife with sincere emotion. "We can't imagine our family without her." The woman smiled through her tears. "Then you did exactly what I would have done if I were here. You gave her what she needed most: unconditional love." The conversation continued for another hour, with the woman sharing stories about the girl's mother and the businessman and his wife telling about the child's development and personality. Gradually, a mutual understanding was forming. "Would you like to meet her?" asked the businessman finally. "I would very much, but in the right way, at her pace, without forcing anything." "Then let's do this. We'll talk to her tonight. Explain the situation carefully. If she wants to meet you, we'll set up a meeting. And if she doesn't want to, then we'll respect her decision. She has already been through enough changes in her life." That night, after dinner, the couple sat with the girl in the living room, while the boy played with his toys nearby. "Honey, we need to talk about something important," began the wife. "Is it about the lady who wants to meet me?" asked the girl calmly. The parents looked at each other, surprised. "How do you know about that?" "You were talking quietly in the kitchen, but I heard some words. And you have that expression you have when something important is happening." Her perception continued to be impressive. The businessman knelt down beside her. "That's right. A lady showed up saying she's your grandmother, mother of your heart mom who died. The mommy who had me in her tummy?" "Exactly." The girl was thoughtful. "Is she like the aunt who took care of me at first, or like the aunt who hurt me later?" "According to her, she's like the aunt who took care of you at first. She says she loves you and wants to meet you. But if I meet her, will you still be my parents?" "Forever," assured the wife immediately. "Nothing will change that." "And will my brother continue to be my brother?" "Of course, yes," said the boy, coming closer to hug her. The girl considered everything carefully. "Can I think about it?" "Of course you can. And whatever decision you make, we'll support it. Even if I decide I don't want to meet her, even then. And if I decide I want to meet her, then we'll arrange a safe meeting with both of you present. And she won't try to take me away." "Never," promised the businessman. "You are our daughter, and no one will change that." The girl hugged both parents. "Then I think I want to meet her. If she really loved my first mommy, maybe she has beautiful stories to tell." The next morning, they called the woman, organizing a meeting for the following weekend. It would be at the public park, a neutral environment, with the whole family present. "Thank you," said the woman, clearly emotional. "I promise I won't do anything that might scare or confuse her." "We know," replied the businessman. "Our daughter has a special gift for judging the character of people. If she feels comfortable with you, we'll know your intentions are pure." While they waited for the day of the meeting, the family talked more about the situation. The girl asked questions about her biological family, about the mother who had died, about what it would be like to have a grandmother. "Will she teach me things that only grandmothers know?" she asked one night. "What kind of things?" asked the wife. "How to make special cookies, or tell old stories, or teach me songs that she sang to my first mommy." The prospect of expanding her family even further, rather than threatening the existing stability, seemed to excite her. And for the first time since receiving the news, the businessman and his wife began to consider that perhaps this new development could be a blessing, not a threat. After all, their daughter had spent her entire life proving that love does not diminish when it is shared. It only multiplies. Chapter 14. The Sunday of the meeting arrived with a perfect blue sky and a soft breeze that made the leaves of the park's trees dance gently. The family arrived a few minutes before the scheduled time, finding the grandmother already sitting on a bench, holding a small bundle with evident nervousness. The girl firmly held her parents' hands as they approached. When the older woman saw her, her eyes filled with tears. "You are even more beautiful than I imagined," she said softly, without moving from the bench so as not to scare the child. "Are you my real grandma?" asked the girl with her direct honesty. "I am, my dear. I am the mother of your heart mom who had you in her tummy." Was she pretty? She was the most beautiful person in the world. And she had an immense heart, like yours. The girl let go of her parents' hands and approached a few steps. "Do you have pictures of her?" The grandmother carefully opened a small folder, showing several photographs. The girl studied each one with fascination, delicately touching her mother's face in the images. "Do I look like her?" "Very much, especially when you smile." "And did she like stories like me?" "She loved them. I used to read to her every night." The grandmother hesitated. "I brought her favorite book. If you want, I can read it to you too." The girl looked at her parents, who nodded encouragingly. "You can read." For the next 30 minutes, the grandmother read the story in the same soft and affectionate voice that she had used with her own daughter decades ago. The girl gradually approached until she was sitting next to her on the bench. "Grandma," she said suddenly, using the term naturally, "are you going to stay here close now?" "If you want me to, yes. Not to interfere, but to be part of the family." The businessman and his wife looked at each other. There was something genuinely maternal in the way the woman interacted with the girl, without trying to force intimacy or compete with them. "Our family always has room for more love," said the girl, echoing the words she had heard so often at home. 2 years later, the family had expanded in a natural and harmonious way. The grandmother lived in a small house near the mansion, took care of the children some afternoons a week, and had become an integral part of their lives. She had brought stories of the biological family, culinary traditions, and above all, a tangible connection with the mother that the girl had never known. The businessman's foundation had grown, helping hundreds of families rebuild their lives. The ex-leader of the bikers now worked as a counselor in the project, helping other men who had lost everything to find purpose again. The woman who had abused the girl had completed her rehabilitation in prison, and although she never had direct contact with the family again, she sent occasional letters through the social worker, always asking about the child's well-being and thanking them for having found a loving family. One spring morning, while the whole family, now including the grandmother, was having coffee in the garden, the girl, now 7 years old, made an observation that perfectly summarized their journey. "You know what I found out?" she said, looking around the table full of people who loved her. "When you open your heart to love, it always finds a way to grow to fit more people." The businessman smiled, watching his extraordinary daughter who had transformed not only his life, but the lives of everyone around him. His fortune in money had decreased over the years, but his true wealth, measured in love, family, and purpose, had multiplied in ways he had never imagined possible. "And what else did you find out?" he asked. "That real heroes aren't people without fear," she replied wisely. "They are people who do the right thing even when they are scared." At that moment, with the morning sun illuminating the garden and his family gathered, the businessman knew that he had found the true meaning of wealth, and that his greatest legacy to the world would be that extraordinary girl who had grown to become exactly what the world needed, someone who chose love over fear, forgiveness over revenge, and hope over despair. The story that had begun with cries of terror in a dark parking lot ended with laughter of joy in a sunny garden, proving that even the darkest beginnings can lead to the most luminous endings. If you liked this wonderful story, please comment giving a score from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important, and if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.